It takes all kinds of critters to make Farmers Vincent's fritters. Hey movie junkies, welcome back to Twin Flicks, where we always here celebrate the magic of movies and most importantly, physical media with you. Now, this is part of my, I guess I'm going to call it my horror double feature 4K comparison. I decided to release this video of Motel Hell and the comparison of Creepshow at the same time because I thought, why not? Let's throw caution to the wind and see what happens. So if you guys haven't checked out my Blu-ray versus 4K comparison of Creepshow, definitely check that out. You can hit the link at the end of this video. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about and comparing Motel Hell 4K UHD. And yeah, there's some significant improvements in this. However, when you go into watching this 4K, and the reason I'm talking about this is because I've heard some people really trash this 4K. And the reason being is because they're saying that it looks like a poor transfer where it looks very muddy and grainy and doesn't look as crisp and sharp as, say, even like Creepshow does. Well, I have to say, number one, have you never seen the movie before? Because this is a very low budget indie type horror film. It was made on basically a shoestring budget. Which means they used a low budget film stock, low budget equipment. They used what they had to light the scenes. It's a very dark film, obviously. A lot of the times the scenes are shot at night or under very dim light, and there's a purpose for that. And because of that, yeah, you're going to have a lot of grain, some thick grain, and even some other issues they'll talk about more in the review. The Blu-ray had it too. And yeah, so it was all baked into the negative. It was all inherited issues, if you call it that, because of the low film stock and the low quality of the film. So yeah, just because you see a lot of grain in an older movie that's almost 50 years old, first of all, that's an indie movie, that does not mean it's a poor or bad transfer. It's just the way the film looks. And this Blu-ray, honestly, I didn't have any problems with it at the time. I thought it looked great, but there are some significant improvements with this 4K that I'll get into in a moment. But Shout Factory went back into the vaults and restored Motel Hell in a 4K restoration from the original 35mm negative with the added benefits of HDR10 and Dolby Vision grading, and also the correct aspect ratio of 1:85:1, whereas the Blu-ray was incorrect at 1:78:1. So right there's an improvement. All right, so let's get into it and check out the differences here between the 4K UHD and the Blu-ray of Motel Hell, and if it's worthy of an upgrade. Now, as I mentioned previously, Motel Hell is definitely a rough-looking film, which makes sense considering the low budget of the source material used to make the film. That said, this new 4K looks incredible, and honestly the best I've ever seen it before on home media. The benefits and improvements are immediately noticeable. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with the grain structure, and that was really the biggest hurdle and also the most improvement of this 4K is with the grain structure. The Blu-ray did look very harsh and muddy, very muddy at times, especially during some of the smokier night scenes and some of the dimly lit scenes. Now, I'm not sure how well you can make it out here in this video between the screenshots, but the grain field with this 4K has been greatly improved upon, looking much more consistent now and not nearly as muddy. Yes, the grain is still very prominent and thick, but it's more balanced and stable now. Another area that's been greatly improved on is the black levels. The movie takes place at night, so much so that it plays a character in the movie, and that's an area the Blu-ray really struggled with, along with dimly lit scenes. The night scenes looked very crushed on the Blu-ray, much of the time obscuring details, textures, and even certain objects was obscured. Now these night scenes and dimly lit scenes look much more lifelike, and also looks more naturally dark night. And also the dimly lit scenes are handled much better, where details are more visible. But I will say that because of inherited issues, The black levels do have some inconsistency with balance and tone. It's very slight though, and it's only here and there. So unless you're looking for it, you're probably not going to even notice it. A very nice improvement is with the colors. I was just blown away by how poppy the colors are. And thanks to the help of HDR and Dolby Vision grading enhancing the image, we have very bright, vivid, lifelike colors from blood, cherry, and crimson reds. The red neon sign at the very beginning looks incredible against the blackness of the night. We have brilliant yellows that ignite the screen and greens that look fuller and lusher with greenery, but also with the green floodlights. As you can see here, they are handled much, much better on the 4K when you compare it to the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray, those floodlights look way blown out. The saturation is slightly elevated more, giving even more life to the image without it looking overly used or harsh. Contrast is also handled better, giving more brightness to the image, and skin tones are also warmer and more natural looking, while on the Blu-ray they were leaning more towards a palish skin tone. Daylight exteriors reveal splendid definition of landscapes with bright, vivid colors. The entire color palette just really pops off the screen, giving more vigor and life to the movie. Details and textures are also greatly improved on, looking razor sharp without any artificial sharpening that I noticed. From textures on walls, shine on cars, down to blades of grass and bushes and other greenery. Inside the kill room looks incredible with an abundance of details and objects in the background that's more active, including objects in the frame that I honestly never really picked up on before, and that's a huge plus for me. A big example here is the fingers and flesh left over on the saw, and all the blood and grime and grim on the walls. It all looks great. The bitrate ranges between 65 and peaking around 76. Alright, now let's get into the audio presentation of this, and it does include the same DTS lossless stereo track as on the previous Shout Factory Blu-ray. Now the dialogue is rough and scratchy at moments, which again, just like the video, comes down to 45-year-old low-budget soundtrack. So again, it's to be expected and not a poor audio transfer at all. But dialogue is very discernible. I didn't have a problem hearing what anyone was saying. Music and sound effects never overpower the dialogue as well. It's a stereo track, and even though it's a stereo track, it does have some nice placement between the sound effects, especially when the chainsaw comes. And also music sounds great too. It has some nice fidelity to it. It's a great sounding stereo mix. Alright, so my score for Shout Factory's 4K UHD presentation of Motel Hell, I'm giving the video a 4.5 out of a 5, and the audio, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of a 5. Dump that previous Blu-ray and upgrade it to this 4K. But now I'm really curious about your opinion here. When you look at the two formats between the Blu-ray and the 4K, which do you think looks better? Head over to the comments section and let me know. Alright guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes here and comparing the differences here between the 4K and the previous Blu-ray. As always guys, keep physical media alive, and I'll see you next time.